I'm just recording. I figured I'd make a video about the eclipse since everyone's like, you know, I've been seeing a lot of people I wouldn't expect to be freaking out about the eclipse as I am. As an American, the eclipse is coming through the Americas right now. And I just know so many people that are kind of losing their mind over it or just very excited about it. And then you really start thinking about it. It's like, why are you so excited? This is something that we know about. The eclipse is just a naturally occurring, reoccurring event that happens every so often. And yet people lose their mind over it, much like they did in the ancient past. However, not quite the same. So that's what we're going to be exploring today in this little video, talking about the eclipse, the spirituality, the history, and the mythology behind it, to see if you find it interesting as I do, and wondering if you should be freaking out or excited for this coming cycle. So hey, before we get started with the conversation, my name is Jacob Dotson. If you haven't been to this channel before, I make videos on ancient spirituality, culture, and religion. So mostly focusing on like the Northern European pagan beliefs, the spiritual beliefs here, but also just looking at how these beliefs survive today. And so yeah, let's start with the science of what the eclipse is. I'm not a scientist by any means, but essentially, the sun is here, the moon travels, and it gets in front of it at some point. And for about 7 minutes, it'll get dark. Not like fully dark, but like dark. And this happens fairly often, actually. It happens every 18 months or so, at least a full solar eclipse. But where it gets a little bit more unique is the fact that if you are in a specific area, say like this area of the United States that the eclipse is happening in right now, this exact trajectory and the exact path of the eclipse, it will not happen like this for another 400 years. And so that means the last time that the eclipse was on this path was when in 1624, which is 4 years after the Mayflower landed in North America. And so really putting that perspective, that's where this kind of becomes a little bit more unique, is this 400-year cycle rather than an 18-month cycle. And just because we understand the science of the eclipse now, moon, sun, gets dark for 7 minutes. Okay, everything's fine. This wasn't how it was in the past. The people who witnessed an eclipse never actually saw it coming, 400, 500 years ago, 2,000 years ago. In fact, for the majority of human history, we didn't really even know what an eclipse was. I mean, we could assume that the moon was coming across the sun, but if you couldn't see the moon, the sun just went dark for 7 minutes. And so if you're a farmer 3,000 years ago, just minding your business, and all of a sudden the sun, the thing that literally provides a life to the fields, that provides light to you and warmth to you, and the thing that is most likely at that time deified, so it's a god to you, and it just goes away. And so, of course, if you're a farmer 3,000 years ago, you're going to freak out if the big light bulb in the sky just goes dim, or I guess the candle in the sky for them. And not only that, we know that people have been recording about the eclipses for a very long time. I think there was a record going back nearly 4,000 years of people trying to figure out and find a cycle to the eclipse. But I think that what is really fascinating is, since it is on this 400-year cycle to a specific area, that's a long time for something that only lasts 7 minutes to turn into myth and legend. You have this story of that farmer that's, oh my gosh, the light bulb in the sky went out. What happened there? And then they have generations of people to talk about what happened to the light bulb in the sky. And before you know it, it's ended up turning into a mythological tale. And this is kind of the birthplace of a lot of mythologies, is people telling stories about things such as volcanoes, earthquakes, lunar and solar events such as the eclipse. This is where a lot of our mythology comes from. And I think that I do find fascinating about the eclipse is the fact that since it happens everywhere in the world, at least every 400 years, that means that every culture in the world probably has a story about an eclipse, whether it's remembered or not. An example of this is when it comes to the ancient Norse, so Norse mythology. There are a few different ideas behind the eclipse. Now, the first one being Skoll and Hati, which are the wolves that chase the sun and the moon, and eventually they catch up to them. So this idea of a wolf consuming the moon. And then it's also said during Ragnarok that Fenrir will also consume the sun, and the moon, I believe, as well. But I think this is referring to, of course, the eclipses. And so the ancient Norse people were looking up at the sun getting consumed by the moon and saying, oh my gosh, like that's a wolf, like everything's going bad. And in general, it seems like most global mythology about the eclipse is very negative. Most people don't seem to have a positive, hey, the light bulb in the sky went out. Good story. It doesn't seem like people think this is a good thing. So interestingly enough, the other thing I kind of wrote down here is the fact that the word eclipse comes from the ancient Greek, and it means either the downfall, the abandonment, or the darkening. So something tells me there's something the ancient Greeks were calling the downfall. Well, it's not good. And I think that's where everything's kind of shifted now. What is really interesting now is with our scientific understanding of this, is like, oh, it's just something that happens every now and then. And so we're able to look at it in a slightly more positive way. So much so that people in the United States, of course, are flocking to the path of the eclipse. And nearly every single Airbnb on the path of the eclipse is fully booked so people can witness their 7 minutes of darkness. So this is really interesting because, again, most of these people along this trajectory of the eclipse are probably not spiritual. I mean, I'm sure there are a fair mix, but I think we as humans just kind of have this attraction to our astronomical elements as far as like the Earth, the sun, and the moon. This is all tied to our DNA. And I think that's ultimately what a lot of people are talking about here in Glastonbury, where I'm at, because I'm in England right now. I think I forgot to mention that in this video. I'm in England. People here are talking about the eclipse, even though it's happening in a completely different continent. So nothing will happen here, not to mention it is cloudy, so it's not like we'd see anything anyways. Is in the ancient past, like, people here in England where it's like cloudy all the time, probably missed eclipses because it's just cloudy. It might be like, it's a bit more dingy today, and then like it just moves on. So yeah, people here, Glastonbury is a very spiritual town. Like that's kind of its thing here. But everyone that I talked to, including someone that just walked by, we're talking about the eclipse and what this means. And even though I'm a bit of a skeptic, if you couldn't tell from the nature of this video, I'm talking about it. I'm like, well, you know what? Like, I am feeling a bit odd right now. Like, I'm feeling a bit different because of the eclipse. Maybe there's something to this. And I think maybe at first I was starting to say ironically, like, oh man, must have been the eclipse. But now I'm actually starting to take it a little bit more seriously because the last few days, I've been in really deep like meditation, reflection on a lot of different things, on just like kind of these new paths in life. And it is very interesting that I've ended up on these mental paths thinking about what do I want to do moving forward? What is the next path for me? And it's really the last day or so that like things have actually been clicking. Like I'm filming this on the day of the eclipse, which means I got to rush home and edit this so you can watch it. For me, it's like, I do feel like there is something to this. And that is kind of the new age understanding of the eclipse. Since we don't necessarily fear it as this dark omen or the downfall, things have changed. And so I think a lot of people now kind of see it as this cosmic reset is the word that I'm hearing a lot. And so they think that this is just the beginning of a new era of the sun and the moon. This is kind of like the exact middle point, boom, they're crossing, something new is beginning. I know a lot of people here are doing meditations. I was literally just invited to go to a singing circle to sing and manifest intentions. And that seems to be the common thread I'm seeing online as well, as people manifesting something. And I think that's what I kind of want to leave you with in this video is no matter what you believe in, these kind of moments in life are symbols of the cyclical nature of our universe. And everything is a cycle. And I think that's why it's a reminder that, life and death is a cycle as well. And these patterns in life are also a cycle. And I think even if you don't believe in the dark side, even if you don't believe in the cosmic reset, I think what you can kind of look at and reflect on is the cyclical nature of life. Thinking that, what are you going to do for the next 18 months? Like, it's going to take another 18 months for this to happen again somewhere in the world. Set an intention for the next 18 months. Where do you want to be? Or perhaps you can set an intention for the next 400 years. You never know. I think the main thing from this research that I was doing is really putting myself in that mindset of that farmer 3,000 years ago. What would they have been thinking? Or imagine like, you're a warrior and you're in a battle, and during the middle of the battle, like the sun gets blocked. And I'm sure, again, this is kind of tied to some ancient mythology that gets shared with us. Maybe some people would be like, oh, this proves that ancient mythologies, ancient religions aren't real. It's just, stories told over and over in time. But I think the fact that people are still obsessed with the eclipse now, if not more so, because we're more aware of it, the fact that people are so interested in it still shows me that we as humans are connected to the sun, the earth, the moon, these natural elements, these astrological changes, and we're more affected by it than we realize. And I think that's something I'm coming to terms with more now, or perhaps Glastonbury is just finally getting to me. Anyways, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video.